A 4-year-old sits alone at a table. In front of her, one marshmallow on a plate. The rule is simple. Wait 15 minutes without eating it, and you get a second one. She waits 11 seconds, then she eats it. 40 years later, a man in a lab coat will point to that 11 seconds and tell you it explains her entire life. Her grades, her salary, her weight, whether her marriage lasted. He will say the children who waited became doctors and the children who grabbed became dropouts, and that the difference was already written into them at 4. For half a century, this was one of the most famous findings in all of psychology. There was just one problem. It was looking at the wrong child. The year is 1970, Stanford University. A psychologist named Walter Mischel is running an experiment inside a nursery school full of faculty children, bright, well-fed kids of professors and graduate students. The setup is almost cruelly elegant. Sit a child down. Offer a treat now, a marshmallow, a cookie, a pretzel. Promise a bigger reward if they can hold out alone in a bare room. Then close the door, start a hidden clock, and watch through the glass. Some kids caved instantly, others fought. They covered their eyes, they sang to themselves. One little boy stroked the marshmallow like a tiny pet rather than eat it. The footage is unbearably charming, and that charm is part of why the study spread. Mischel measured one number for each child, how many seconds they lasted. For years, that number just sat in a filing cabinet. Mischel wasn't even looking for a grand theory of success. He was studying something much smaller, how children distract themselves from temptation. The famous part hadn't happened yet. The famous part came by accident. Years later, Mischel noticed something while chatting with his own daughters who had gone to that same nursery school. When he asked about their old classmates, a pattern seemed to surface. The kids his daughters described as struggling. He had a hunch they were the same kids who'd grabbed the marshmallow fast. So he went back. He tracked down the original children, now teenagers, and asked their parents how they were doing. And the correlation lit up like a struck match. The kids who had waited longer at age 4 were now scoring higher on their SATs. Parents described them as more focused, more competent, better at handling stress. The seconds a preschooler resisted a marshmallow appeared to predict their teenage self with eerie accuracy. This is the moment the marshmallow stopped being a snack and became a prophecy. The story was irresistible. And notice that word, irresistible, because the experiment was about resistance. Here was a single, clean, almost magical idea. Success is self-control. Willpower is destiny. You can see a person's whole future in how they handle one small want. Books were written, TED Talks were given, parents started running the test on their own kids at kitchen tables, watching a toddler reach for a cookie and quietly panicking about their future. The clock had started ticking on a much bigger thing than 15 minutes, and almost no one stopped to ask the obvious question. What was the child actually thinking? Here is the part almost nobody quotes. Decades after Mischel, another team ran the version he never did. They asked a question the original test had simply skipped. What happens to a child's patience when the adult breaks a promise first? A researcher named Celeste Kidd sat children down and made them a deal. Wait, and you'll get a better set of art supplies. Then, for half the kids, she came back empty-handed, just a thin apology and nothing in her hands. For the other half, she kept her word and delivered exactly what she'd promised. Only after that did the marshmallow test begin. The children who had just been lied to barely waited at all. Why would they? They had just learned with their own eyes that the adult's word was worthless. The children who had been told the truth waited far longer, many times longer. Same kids, same marshmallow. The only thing that changed was whether the grown-up could be trusted. Sit with that. The thing the test was supposedly measuring, so some inner moral muscle, some character you're born with, could be switched on or off in a single afternoon by one broken promise. Day 1 of a child's life, a parent says wait and then delivers. Day 2, delivers again. 1,000 days of that, and a child learns the world is reliable. Waiting pays. Now run the other life. A parent who promises and forgets. A fridge that's full this week and empty the next. An adult who says later and means never. 1,000 days of that, and a child learns a different lesson, just as logical, just as smart. Take it now. Tomorrow is a coin flip. The first child looks patient. The second child looks impulsive. But put them in the same room, and you're not measuring their willpower. You are measuring their history. You are measuring which world raised them. The marshmallow test had a name for the kids who waited, the good ones, the disciplined ones, the ones with the bright futures. And every parent watching wanted their child to be one of them. That was the obvious reading, the comfortable one. Wait and you will rise. It held for almost 50 years. Then it cracked. In 2018, a team of researchers led by Tyler Watts decided to do something Mischel never could. They ran the test again, not on a few dozen faculty children, but on over 900 kids, deliberately chosen to include families across the income spectrum. Poor homes, rich homes, single parents, the works. Then they did the thing that breaks beautiful stories. They controlled for the child's background, and the magic faded. Once you accounted for the family a child came from, the mother's education, the household income, the stability of the home, the predictive power of the marshmallow nearly collapsed. A 4-year-old's seconds of waiting told you almost nothing about their teenage success that their zip code hadn't already told you. The marshmallow was never the cause. It was a symptom, a thermometer, not a furnace. What the test had been quietly measuring all along wasn't character, it was trust. And trust isn't something a child invents on their own. It's something the world either gives them or takes away. The kid who grabbed the marshmallow wasn't weak. In a home where promises break, eating it immediately is the correct answer. It's not a failure of self-control. It's a small, sharp act of intelligence. The child who has learned that second marshmallows don't come is doing exactly what their experience taught them. For 50 years, we looked at that child and saw a flaw. We were looking at a survivor. Think about the last time you judged someone for it. The coworker who finances a phone they can't quite afford. The friend who orders the expensive takeout when money's tight. The part of you that quietly files it under bad with money, no discipline, should know better. And here is where it turns toward us. Because we still do this. Every day, we look at the person who can't save, who grabs the short-term thing, who won't delay gratification, and we call it weakness. We call it a character problem. We did it to 4-year-olds and we do it to adults, and almost every time, we are doing what Michel's first viewers did. We are watching someone make a rational choice inside a world we never bothered to see. The child had no way to tell us the room was rigged. We still can. A 4-year-old waited 11 seconds, and we spent 50 years calling it her weakness. It was never weakness. It was an answer to a question no one realized they were asking. Can I trust you? Somewhere, right now, a child is sitting in front of something sweet, doing the math on whether the adults in the room have ever kept their word. The marshmallow was never the test. We were.